everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the Jasmin and Ashley podcast. Today's theme will be about releasing toxic energy to make a healthy transformation. And we have our super special guest today, Andy Wang. And for those that don't know, Andy has his own podcast called Guns, Roses, and Spirituality that I co-host on sometimes. I
All
thought
the
Andy,
time.
yeah. And like on that podcast, it's about spirituality and like kind of like raising your vibration. And we do discuss a lot of like these techniques in terms of, like your emotional guidance system, like releasing these toxic and negative thought patterns. And like how can you transform from the inside out? And I think, this is a topic that a lot of people may be still struggling with, or maybe you haven't even gotten to that point in your life where you're noticing and even like realizing like I don't have to live this way anymore. Like, why do I have so much anxiety all the time? Why do I have so much depression? Like, why do I feel like the world's against me? And we're going to share our stories of like those moments in our lives when we wanted and committed to making a transformation. And even if you realize it or not. So I think to start off with, Andy, do you want to just like share more about yourself?
Yeah, well, real quick, like, are we talking about like toxic, like, as in like just negative, like
Yeah.
thoughts and anxiety? Oh, I thought we
Mhm.
were talking about toxic masculinity. Like, that's what I came prepared to talk
Ooh,
about. Like, I thought that's what it was about.
toxic.
But
Yo, I like
because that's
that.
what I was
Honestly,
thinking.
honestly, I think that still kind of fits in, especially from your point of view as a male.
Yeah, man. I was when I was driving before this podcast, I was thinking like, oh man, like I'm trying to think of like what do I say about like toxic masculinity and stuff because like I'm at the point like raising my vibration for a year and a half. It's like I'm a whole different person now, and I was just thinking today like I can't even relate to that person who used to hold on to this like identity to this like external projection of like this like masculine like alpha male guy. Like that was like my identity. I was everywhere I go. I was like I had that projection and it worked well for me, you know, and I guess being a young person in college or high school, like um, like I don't know, it was like my whole life. It was like I had to convince people that I am this masculine person, or else like it's death, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I
but yeah,
really,
like yeah, I can't
I
even relate
honestly,
to that
I'm
anymore. Yeah.
I'm super interested in this topic now. And I feel like that definitely relates to transformation because I'm sure as a male, like,
Yeah.
and honestly, I have to admit, like,
Yeah.
I do feel bad for males. Because when you like, I just
Yeah.
understanding all of the pressure that's on men, like
Yeah.
the pressure to provide, the pressure to know everything, the pressure to be a leader. And I feel like,
Right.
especially for men, like I'm sure that like when you're so young too, it's like you're not ready for all of that responsibility. Like you're still growing as a person.
Right. I mean, for me, I discovered so at a very young age, I discovered the internet, and I discovered that there's all this information on the internet. If you like really dig, you'll find information that like is super practical and helpful. That you can't that school doesn't teach you. Like so,
Yes,
one thing,
exactly.
right? So one thing I discovered on the internet was psychology, but it was this really like awesome psychology that really helped me like in ways that mainstream psychology that they teach academically I feel like does not even like get
Mhm.
close to touch. So I went from very shy to very confident in a very short amount of time. So I was shy my whole life, and using this psychology that I discovered, I went from, like I said, like the shyest person in the world to being like just really confident in a span of less than a year. And that was like my first big transformation in my life that I've ever experienced. And this is like, I think 10th grade. So that was great. But then, I kept digging through all the psychology stuff, and then I discovered this whole thing about being an alpha male, about being like, man, I can't remember it now. It used to be like my whole life. Like it used to be
Mhm.
everything, like, but now, oh man. So this is why like I had to think about it. I was like, dude, like what even did happen? Because I used to know it so vividly. Now I can't even like recall it. But basically, um, I learned, I don't know, like there was like a bunch of like a list of things like, okay, an alpha male is obviously a leader. He's but he's also not emotional, like blah blah blah. Like, and it's like now I realize some of this stuff is pretty toxic, but it kind of led me to realize. It kind of led to the impression that, okay, you have to be this alpha male guy to be respected and to get girls, or to just even get the respect of women, basically, or girls at that time in my life, basically. And yeah, so it just became this thing. It was either be weak or be an alpha male. Like, that was kind of the thing. Like, either if you're not being manly, you're being weak. Like, so it became this thing, like, looking back on it, it became this thing where I thought that if I'm just being myself, if I'm not talking in like a very serious tone, in a very low tone or whatever, then I'm just like being not an alpha male, being weak, basically.
Like a beta or something.
Yeah, like a fucking beta. But but yeah, so I mean, literally, like, that was that. Like, I was just convinced, and look, everyone around me, like, all kind of like subconsciously subscribe to the same thing. All my friends, like, no one wants to be soft, no one wants to, like, be seen as soft or whatever. It's all about being hard, right? So it's like, or at least among my guy friends, and so like, that's kind of where my life was, and I went with it, and honestly, it worked. Like, I don't know, like, in high school, like, it worked in the sense that, like, I was attracting girls. Like, I was actually, like, really respected and everything. Like, it was where it was like cool, like, it was good. And even when I became like super present, when I quieted my mind, and had this, like, this whole spiritual revolution or whatever, I still could not let go of this need to be like alpha, like this need to feed this image. Yeah.
Do you feel like that contributed, like, towards like any type of anxiety or depression, like trying to maintain that image?
Yeah. Well, and then I got in a relationship. I got into a relationship, and and this she lived with me. So now it's like I have to do this 24/7, like 24/7, right? And it still worked, but it was like at some point it was like I couldn't even show love or affection because I would feel like that's soft. Wow. And that's like she's gonna lose interest in me if I show love and affection. Now I feel bad for her. Now it's like thinking that, like, now I feel bad for her, but I was thinking in my head, like, okay, like, probably my freaking alphaness or whatever attracted her, so I have to keep that going. I have to keep that type of like thing going. I can't be soft or whatever, right? So
I think that's like, that really does explain too, like, how easily we can fall into like these negative traps and just feel like we have to keep going in this routine. Like, I swear to God, I feel the same way, Andy. If I look at myself, when I think about back, even a year ago, even 2 years ago, I swear I don't recognize that girl. I love her.
Right.
I honor her.
Same.
But dude, I have a completely different mentality.
Same. I think you're right. And I think I want to also mention that Jasmine was the first person that introduced me into, meditation. I wasn't taking that term seriously in my lifetime. I've never like said, oh, I need to meditate. Like, so, when Jasmine introduced that into me, like my life, I said, oh, this is very beneficial. This is great for me to like release my toxic thoughts. In the past, I was so rough, like always stressed, always thinking the worst and not taking time to like evaluate the situations I was in mentally, physically. And I think looking back, I'm like, wow, the transformation was really good because I took so many steps to heal myself. I took so many steps to cut people out that was like causing me down the wrong path. So it's just interesting hearing all these stories because it's like we look back at our old selves and we realize that most of the information wasn't there at that time because the wrong people were in our lives. The wrong information was not being delivered to us. And that's why this episode is great, because most people are like, okay, we're in a pandemic. What do I do next? This is year 2 battling COVID. How do we approach going, in the future, releasing toxic energy in the middle of a pandemic? So this is really good.
Yeah. So so basically what happened was I finally hit rock bottom. Like all that like putting up this like whole false thing led me to rock bottom. And from there, like you said, like I finally accessed the right information. I discovered all these like TED Talks and like all these guys talking about what was it called? It's basically like new definition or redefining masculinity. If any guy wants to just look that up, redefining masculinity. Basically, yeah, it was just like there was all these videos of guys talking about how, like what I've experienced, like, they believe that as a guy you need to be like, basically you gotta close your emotions, you can't be emotional, blah 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 blah. And how like for actually, you want to let yourself express yourself, like that's not weak or whatever. So I had to re-educate myself, and because I hit rock bottom, it was like I was just like, screw it, like I might as well. So to the point where, a few days later I went to Home Depot and I bought myself a flower, like
that's so
like
sweet.
Yeah, and I posted it like on, I think, on Facebook at the time or something, like and everything. But yeah, and so I made a complete 180 from is 180? Yeah, 180. Yeah. From like, just because I'm a really radical and extreme person, like internally and spiritually. Like, so I made that huge shift from like just being just 100% committed to being toxic to 100% committed to just opening up and just being myself. So nowadays, like I don't ever try to think of what I'm gonna say, try to put up an image. I'm just being present in the moment, and whatever shows up, shows up.
And I feel like it's so important to realize that, like, when you're vulnerable, and it's like not even, maybe on the outside you might seem vulnerable, but it's like when you're strong and courageous enough to share your story, to ask for help, like that doesn't make you weak at all. Exactly. And you know what's interesting? I feel like actually, like, are your parents first generation immigrants too, technically?
Yes, my mom was the first out of all of her siblings to go to the United States. She migrated from the island Antigua in the West Indies, and she was the first one. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because the first thing she said to me was, oh, I felt like leaving because I felt like I was living in a cage back in the Caribbean. So it's just funny because her emotions and the things that she went through is what really pushed her to say, okay, it's time to like get out of this space that I was in and just like be a better woman. So she didn't just quickly got up and say, hey, it's time to leave the Caribbean. And it took time, She was the first one to make that big drastic move out of all of her, siblings.
I feel like it's important just because, like, I'm sure it's like the same for the rest of you guys. It's like, we grew up with the mentality of like, we're meant to struggle. Money is meant to be a problem. Like, dude, like I used to get made fun of if I was crying. Like I wasn't even allowed to show emotions. Otherwise like my parents thought I was ungrateful. And it's like I feel that just affects me so much.
Jasmine, exactly what you just mentioned is how my dad used to be screaming at me. Like every time I showed weakness or showed like I was so frustrated, he gets upset at me for that. He wasn't like comforting me in the situation and making me, assess my feelings and try to like get out of that mood. It was always about, stop crying, stop showing you're weak, don't go outside like that, like don't look a certain way. And it's funny because what Andy said before about how he's not really putting an image and he doesn't have to like think about his thoughts, I feel back then I was like that. Everything was always about judgment. You have to be a certain weight, you have to hold yourself a certain way, you shouldn't have kids too young. Like everything's always about judgment. And that was how my childhood was. now, as you know, I'm 32 years old, I'm like, fuck that. I want to live my life and I want to be in a healthy space mentally and physically. I don't have time to like think about judgment, think about the negative thoughts. Like releasing the negative thoughts is what helps me become successful in the future. And I feel that's what I learned back then. It was always constantly about what other people think and not so much about how I'm handling situations or like bettering myself mentally and bettering myself, you know, emotionally. And I think that's what I would like to do this year, is making sure I self-evaluate everything I'm doing, not so much like going into this and then going into that and making this move. Like even just in general, like as I'm dealing with this, you know, new thing called marriage, it's like I don't want to be thinking too much about the little things. I want to just let things flow, because when you think about it too much, it starts to like build up in your head, like, oh, this needs to be done this way, this needs to be done that way, my marriage needs to be like this. No, just let things go, you know. And that's why I'm happy we're doing this episode, because back then I don't think my parents helped me to make a full transformation. I felt like it was a battle that I did myself
Yeah.
to like be a better woman. It wasn't so much my parents came to me and said, hey, you know, let's sit down and talk about this. It was kind of like me digging for the information, the same way Andy was digging, you know, discovering psychology, discovering like different techniques to grow or different techniques to be the alpha male. Like for me, I was like studying techniques to, you know, have a side business, studying techniques to, you know, cut friends off, like going on Reddit, like trying to like see these people's stories. Like it wasn't kind of like, okay, you know, my parents taught me this is what I had to do. Like it's really about self growth and self-evaluation and just figuring out what the next steps you need to do. And that's why I'm happy that, you know, this year I'm going to do more meditation, because meditation is going to help me to see more clearly and help me see what path I should go down in the future.
Yeah, not to like bash our parents or anything, but it's just like, I think it's just so important to realize that like, if you're stuck in like a certain thought routine, or like you're just having like thoughts automatically pop up to you, like when negative events happen, it's like, it's so important to realize. And like, this is what being mindful and like meditating would really help with. It's just like realizing like, bro, like a lot of these thoughts aren't even your thoughts. It's like, if you think about it, a lot of negative thoughts come from other people, how they think. And like we just adopt it. So it's like once you're like, yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Yeah. Sorry, just real quick. Just a technique for people who like want to start like just practicing what you said, like realizing like or trying to practice mindfulness. For a lot of people, it's hard, especially for beginners. And so one thing I highly recommend is whenever a negative thought or emotion comes up, just say to it, this is not me, this is a program, or this is not me, this is thought, or this is not me, this is an emotion. So yeah, say one of those. Like usually I used to say when I first started, it was, this is not me, this is a program. And so that's all I did. Like I wasn't trying to get rid of the negative thoughts because I was just a beginner back then. And that's what my coaches told me to do, was just whenever thoughts come up, just use that as a moment. So think about it. You're every time a negative thought or emotion comes up, it's an opportunity to recognize that it's not you. And that's like the first step in building awareness and building mindfulness. So this technique isn't really for the purpose of just immediately letting go of negative thought. It's more of a gateway to building awareness and eventually quieting your mind. But yeah, it's just whenever a thought comes up, this is not me, this is a program. This is not me, this is a program. And then next thought comes up, this is not me, this is a program. And over time, you start to realize you are not your thoughts. Like you are this awareness, this consciousness that contains your thoughts. And yeah, this is a simple technique. Literally just start practicing that, and you gain some awareness out of that.
And my favorite part about even practicing mindfulness and meditation, especially in the beginning, was so I feel like as a I was really codependent, meaning that like other people's opinions mattered so much
Right.
to me. Bro,
Right.
one criticism could literally ruin my day, ruin my week, even like ruin my whole month.
I'm the same
Because
Right.
way. That's how I
right?
Right.
was. Yep.
It's like
Same.
you
Same.
just hear one negative critique and it's just like, bro, like your brain just like like laser focuses in and
Yes.
like doesn't even let you think about anything else. And like that really affects your confidence. And like so like when you start to become mindful, like meditation is such a great practice because you just become this open vessel. I'm just like, it's almost like you're watching your life as a movie, kind of. Like you're just being able to be in the audience for a change instead of like being like the director or like like being the actor in like this movie of your life. Like just
Right.
take a step back and seeing like, bro, like first of all, who's running the script? Who's really directing my life? And I feel like once I started becoming more mindful, and especially being codependent, like that's when I was really able to gain confidence because I started realizing like, dude, what do I want? What do I like? What do I want to see in my life? And that really helped me build up the confidence to not only protect my own boundaries, but like even like intentionally set certain boundaries. Cause like right now, like if someone comes up to me and it's like they're super negative, like their energy does not match mine. Like that vibration and frequency, like I can't even relate to that anymore. I feel like once you start like in the process of transformation, like it might suck because and like this is important too, like you kind of had to realize like you were an equal participant in everything that's happened to you. Even if someone's really hurt you in the past, like just taking that accountability, like you had a part in it too. And like, unfortunately, like, we didn't know better at the time. Like everyone does the best they can with what they have. And so like as soon as you start changing yourself and just like being more mindful about like the transformation that you want to see in your life, like you really start to see everything around you and like this whole crazy new perspective. Like, does this specific person even like, do I need them in my life? Like, do they really add any value? And that's why I think like it's so important too. It's like when you're going through this transformation, certain people may leave your life, and that's perfectly okay. Like it's really all part of the process. And actually, I know like you've had experience with that too, um, like cutting out those toxic friends. Cause like, and just take a look. That's another good exercise too. Just think about like who's around you right now in your life. Like, do you bond?
Especially the way they're having conversations with you. If you notice someone is constantly like ignoring, if you mention your like one of your accomplishments and they're not really showing any interest and saying, oh, so tell me more about that, that's a sign. And that was one of the things that I noticed when I was dealing with a lot of toxic friends. Every time I was like always trying to like introduce like new things I was learning and working on and doing, there was never a happy moment. They weren't being happy with me. And that was part of the reasons why I had to like cut those toxic friends off, because they weren't really, appreciating the things I was talking about or really showing like, oh, no, we're so happy. Like it didn't feel genuine. And I'm happy that Jasmine, you mentioned like how you take a step back, look at what's happening around you. That is actually part of the process. In order for you to make a healthy transformation, you need to self-evaluate. You need to take a look at the human beings that are in your circle. Take a look at the outsiders, take a look at who's in your inner circle, because those who are in your inner circle are the ones that are influencing you the most with your everyday life decisions, like how, where to work or what you should do next, or like, oh, what hobbies to get into. Like those are the people that's really influencing sometimes your thoughts and influencing your actions. So part of the process is to release the toxic people that's around you, because if you don't release the toxic people that are around you, you go down the road of still being toxic, and you start to be in your life starts to spiral down, because you have no way to figure out, okay, what healthy steps I should take next. You're just going to be sitting there doing the same thing over and over again, and there's no growth, there's no new growth. You start to get more angry at the fact that you're not doing any better. You thought you were going to change and the changes haven't happened. So you have to start with what's happening around you, not even just friends, like how you live in your life, how you're eating, how you're, how you're exercising, what,
Mhm.
that's how I see it. I feel like for me in my situation, I made a full healthy transformation because I spent a lot of time listening to people who share their success stories, like opening Etsy shops, opening their own businesses, like starting their brands. Like I said, no, I want to be like that person. Like it was so exciting for me to hear other people talk about their success and talk about the resources that they used to make so much money on the side. That's how I made my transformation. It's kind of like I wanted to like step out of that shell of working the 9 to 5 job and just going home and then just watching TV. I wanted to like get out of that shell. Like I wanted to be in a shell where I'm better than what I was before. I want to like be successful. I want to be a CEO. So that's part of my transformation story, that I didn't want to be Ashley, the girl who's an accountant. I wanted to be Ashley, who's an accountant, this and that. Like I wanted to have like a multi business aspect in life, as opposed to having the non-hustler aspect. And most people don't want to be hustlers, but being a hustler, is not a bad thing. Like being a hustler, not in a sense where, you need to sell drugs, but I'm just saying, we're meaning like hustling, meaning you keep yourself busy to feel good. You keep yourself busy to make a lot of money. You keep yourself busy to be, to be happy. And that's what I see the hustler mentality as. Like, it's not just, okay, I'm waking up every day and I just have to find a way to make $1 today. It's really, I'm waking up every day and I'm living because I want my life and I want my legacy to be exciting. I don't want my legacy to be 9 to 5 job and then I retire. Like everyone wants to. So, with this episode, we're not just talking about personal transformations. We're also talking about transformations with different aspects in terms of, health, your emotions, businesses, growth. Like not everybody has a healthy transformation. But as Jasmine said, and Andy, everything's a process. And it first starts with negative thoughts. It first starts with eliminating your self-doubts, like doubting that you can't be the next millionaire, or doubting that you can't have this life. You doubt, like it all starts with eliminating that doubt. And once you eliminate doubt, you open room for healthy spaces of like where you're able to concentrate on how to continue to be happy, concentrate on, with Jasmine, something you do, like traveling, like enjoying that freedom with your current life. So eliminating thoughts like that and eliminating, negative, toxic friends helps you to create more space for opportunities in your life.
And I have to admit, like, I swear, like all of those steps, like even like those areas of like focus that most people want, like, health, wealth, their careers, even their friendships, relationships, I feel like that all starts to transform naturally once you start changing your negative thought space. And like just like realizing like, bro, like you can literally do anything you want with your life. We have free will. You could, even in this moment, literally right now, you can make the intention that you want to change your life, that you want to be better, and just like letting it all flow and seeing like what comes into your space. And I have to admit, I just want to also bring up, because like just for anyone because I've been in this space, because when I was super depressed and anxious, I only had energy for the bare minimum. And even then, like I couldn't even do shit. Like I couldn't even worry about like all of these goals. Like, bro, I was literally trying to just survive the next hour without like losing my mind and like being in this like crippling anxiety. Like once you start transforming and like once you start like really releasing these negative thought patterns and like even like your own toxic behaviors, like that energy to be busy, and busy like in a good way, like you like it's just so much more exciting. You're meeting all of these new people, you get to like co-create with them, like you're having all of these opportunities come up for you. Like once you're gonna have the energy to do all of that and have more fun and exciting like things happen in your life, like once you start like releasing that, because dude, it's such a weight and it's such a barrier. when you're not thinking positively.
Yeah, I
No,
feel
that's
like
a good point.
Mhm. I feel like everything both of y'all have been saying, like, just kind of reminds me of just the importance of like meditating in the morning. Because when you meditate in the morning, just for 15 minutes, you quiet your mind. That helps you. Um, I don't want to use the word assess, because that sounds like you're analyzing using logic. I like the word awareness, which is when you quiet your mind, you tap into this awareness. And for 15 minutes, you're doing this, and that's the first thing. If that's one of the first things you do in the morning, your days are going to be a lot different. So even if you're taking a lot of action in the next, parts of your days, like, you're going to be operating at a different level, because every morning you're tapping into this different level, this different place every morning. So it's like meditating in the morning is almost like taking this super awesome like drug or something that literally affects your day.
And like when we meditate, like for those like, because even Ashley, like you even mentioned earlier, like you never really thought about meditating. It's like, dude, you're not like supposed to go into the mountains and like become a monk and like, sit down for like hours at a time. Like meditating, it's really just about just closing your eyes, taking that moment to be still, and just being in the moment, and just like see, like it's such a great opportunity just to realize like what thoughts are coming up for me, and kind of just like taking that step back to saying like, what kind of thoughts, what's the quality of my thoughts that I'm thinking.
Right.
And Andy, do you want to like, so my favorite technique that you taught me about was like about the thought rampage, and I know that was like a big thing for you. Do you kind of just like want to explain what that is?
But so basically, so I teach this thing called thought mastery. It's all about being able to raise your vibration and all this good spiritual stuff. But I'm gonna kind of keep it very simple. It's about half of the equation is about subtracting your negative thoughts, releasing your negative thoughts. It's like pulling the weeds out of your garden. And that's, I think, most people who want to go into spirituality, who wants to improve, I think that's the first part, is quieting your mind. But then let's say you've been practicing this and you're ready to turbocharge your life, and you want to really raise your vibration, and like I said, you've done a lot of the clearing work. Now this is where my life completely transformed, when I learned how to practice appreciation. So when you are having a ton of negative thoughts, do not try to be positive, because that doesn't work. You want to get rid of the negative. You want to pull the weeds out of the garden, and then you can plant seeds. You can plant the positive stuff. So the thought rampage is basically understanding how your thoughts work and using it to your advantage. Because there's this thing, you might have heard of it, it's called the law of attraction. And for a second, don't think of the law of attraction as like external manifestations. Think of the law of attraction as a real law. It's like gravity almost, but for your thoughts. So all of your thoughts are like a magnet. And when you start thinking about a thought for a few seconds, more thoughts like it come and basically come together and start attracting more and more. So most of us do this every single day, but in the negative direction. When we start thinking about how the coworker made fun of us or whatever, you think about that for a few seconds, and then you start thinking about, man, I should have said this, I should have this come back. And then a few seconds later, you're thinking about, man, I embarrassed myself. Like, I'm so embarrassing. I hate myself. Why didn't I say this? And then the next few seconds, you keep thinking about it, and it turns more and more depressing. You're building that momentum towards the negative direction. So you want to get rid of that by practicing mindfulness and meditation. But then let's say in the next year, or a half a year, you're able to accomplish that. You're able to achieve this much more quieted mind. Now that's not the end. Now you can turbocharge your life by getting into the positive thoughts. So just spend a few minutes a day, maybe in the morning, right after meditation or wherever, and just spend a few minutes thinking some positive thoughts. And what happens is, just like when you think of negative thoughts, how you think about it for a few seconds and more negative thoughts comes, same applies for positive. You're going to be a little rusty at this at first, but it'll become easy. So start thinking of something that feels good and easy. Don't try to think like, oh, like right away, if let's say money is a hard subject for you, don't try to think of like, oh, I'm gonna be a billionaire, because if you're struggling with that topic, then just leave it alone. Try something easier, like, man, you know, like, I don't know, maybe I'm off work today, I'm gonna go for a walk, like I'm going to the beach, like, man, that's so nice. I appreciate the fact that I'm gonna be able to go to the beach. I have freedom. I can experience the wind. I can experience the water. I can experience the sun. I can experience all the people around me, and I feel good about that. I feel good about my freedom. I feel good about my day off. And just a few seconds of thinking that, you're gonna discover something crazy, which is when you start thinking a positive thought, more positive, the universe brings you more positive thoughts and more positive thoughts, and you just ride that momentum, meaning like as more positive thoughts come to you, you just choose that thought, and then the next thought and the next thought. So yeah, you just spend a minute or two doing that. So think of something easy. Think about your dog or something, and just think about it for a few minutes, or just think about anything to appreciate that feels good, and you'll start feeling good. And over time, this turns into happiness. And over time, that happiness turns into this super amazing aligned life, basically. Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
I think he just brought up the recurring like highlight of this episode is it's all about promoting positive thoughts to increase your happiness. And that is part of making a full transformation.
Right. Because look, I was sitting in a movie theater like a while ago, like a year ago, and I was thinking, like, why is it so hard for me to be happy? Like, and then I realized, because first of all, no one teaches us how to be happy. No one teaches us the importance of it. No one teaches us anything about it, right? No. So, and so that's when I had to educate myself, and I realized it's all about your thoughts. Like, it's all about what thoughts you're feeding. And if you're able to release the negative thoughts and start, just slowly, gradually introducing some positive thoughts just for a few minutes a day, over time, that really builds up. And at first, it was awkward and uncomfortable to think positive thoughts. But over time, now it's just like, it's like almost like the internal environment changes. You know how there's like global warming, there's pollution, there's fog or whatever. It's like that, but internally, when we have all this negative thought, it's like your internal environment is just yucky and negative and dense and hard, and it feels like you're like going through life in a super overheated car on a super hot day. You're just so uncomfortable all the time. Like that's how I felt most of my life. So when I learned to quiet my mind and slowly, like got more positive, it's like, wow, now my internal world feels like this paradise. It feels like this clean air, clean energy. It feels like happiness. It feels like healthy. Like, I don't know, like, it feels bright. And it took time. It took time at first, like I said, it was hard to think positive thoughts. It's kind of hard to feel good. Sometimes it even felt forced. But you just slowly ease yourself into it. And just over time, like things rapidly start changing for you.
I have a question for the both of you. Did you at some point in your lifetime ask yourself, okay, what is my purpose in life? Did you feel like you're just sitting in this room, or you're sitting at a job, or you're sitting with your family saying, what am I doing with myself? Like, what should I do, in the future? Like, what should my career be? Like, was it stressful for you guys? Have you ever felt like, okay, like this is too much, I don't know what to do with myself?
And this is how, Andy, this is actually how we met. Because I remember coming to you for advice on like, yes, I was listening to the episode on Guns, Roses, and Spirituality, the topic of passion. Dude, that's been the question I've thought about my whole entire life. What the fuck is my purpose on this earth? And that's why I was suicidal for such a long time, because I felt like, who gives a fuck what my purpose is? Like, dude, like there's so much negativity in the world. I felt like the world was against me. Like, why don't I just end it? Like, screw this. There's nothing good in life.
Jasmine, you know what's crazy? First of all, that's one of like my earliest episodes. And also now I totally forgot about that. And that was that was a life-changing moment for me too. Like, just realizing, so what happened was I took money out of the equation for a second. So we're talking about like finding your passion. So I just took money out of the equation for a second, and I just wrote down, what do I enjoy in life? Like, just forget about the pressure of, oh, I got to make a career out of anything. Just what do I enjoy doing? And so one of the top few things was I enjoyed spirituality. I enjoyed personal development. And I enjoyed podcasts. I enjoyed smoking with my friends. I enjoyed, like, I literally wrote down all the things that I just enjoyed. And then I look at the top, and the top three things was spirituality, personal development, and podcasts. So I was like, fuck it, why not do like a spiritual transformational podcast? So that's how that started, and it just kind of came about. But now, a year and a half later, I just want to say, Jasmine, like, I don't even like relate to that anymore, in the sense that, like, if you came to me now, I probably wouldn't even introduce you to that podcast episode, because what I will say now, is, for me, my purpose, moment to moment, is to get in alignment, is to feel good, is to be present, is to be in alignment. Like, I know that sounds like whatever, but this is something you can do moment in moment, to be and align with your best self. And that moment to moment, that affects the next moment and the next moment and the next moment. And you're going to be more of your best self, and you're going to evolve more than ever. And why do we want to fulfill this passion, or why do we want to find a purpose? I believe it's because we believe that we'll feel better in the having of it. So, but the thing is, you can feel better now by releasing your negative thoughts and slowly starting to move into the positive. So this is like a really spiritual thing, but that's what I personally believe. Like, moment to moment, my purpose is finding my alignment. And also, I call this thing surrendering to the universe. And that's what I'm most passionate about. That's what I'm most excited about. It's actually very selfish, because, like, I'm not even thinking about like saving the world or anything. Like, I just, because what I've discovered is, I used to try to do that. I used to try to help everyone, without finding my own alignment first. And it just kind of, I tried so hard, but I couldn't barely help anybody. But once I prioritized my own alignment from moment to moment, it's like I'm helping people left and right. Like, it's just like, just love and positivity and all this is flowing out of me. And it's a very spiritual thing, but that's what I've realized. And yeah.
And that's the beautiful part about making a transformation for yourself. Yeah. Trust me, everyone around you, you're going to notice a change in them too. Like, that's why it literally all starts with you. Even if you're surrounded by toxic family members, I swear, like, once you start becoming into your own alignment, like, you're going to notice them starting to change too, like them changing your mentality. And that's what it's all about. Just like believing that you can make a transformation, believing that others can, like, also start to fall into alignment with you. Like, no one around you has to be like stuck in this like negative space. And that's why it's so important. And I love that analogy of like, you have to pull out the weeds first before you can plant like this beautiful new garden. Because it's like, if you ask yourself right now, like, can I make a transformation? If you don't even believe that yourself, how do you expect it to happen?
No, I think you're right. It has to start with you. Your confidence has to be there. It has to be at a high point. If your confidence is at a low point, you can't make a healthy transformation.
And it's okay.
You're going to be struggling to figure out how to like get your way through this new process that you're dealing with, you know?
And even with confidence too, like, and it'll build, your confidence will build up naturally the more you start to transform yourself.
Yes.
But again, it just starts with like, what's your thought process like right now? And that's why it's just so important. Like, you really start at the basics. Like, dude, you don't have to get a gym membership. You don't have to like buy like fancy clothes. Like, no, it's just like get new friends. Like, dude, just start with yourself. Like, you're gonna notice things.
Oh my God, Jasmine, you brought up something good. It's not about getting new friends to be confident. Like, it starts with you first before you jump into, okay, I have to get like all these TikTok followers and all these things, you know?
Yeah. 100%.
And Andy, I have to admit, like, dude, I'm so happy that you brought up the idea of like the toxic masculinity, because that's also just like another factor too. Like, we're just conditioned. We grew up conditioned with like these specific, but like sets of beliefs and ideas that we have to be a certain way. Like, bro, like, you have free will. You can change at any point.
Right. It's just like, you've convinced yourself that to hold on to whatever programming, there's a reason why you're holding on to it, because deep down on some level, you believe it serves you.
And for those that want more information, honestly, Andy, you have seriously completely changed my life. Like, I owe so much of my
he's really good. I'm so happy you joined us today.
So we're gonna link. We're definitely. I definitely want to link everyone to your high vibrational course on Guns, Roses, and Spirituality. You have. I know you have a whole YouTube playlist on like mindfulness and like being present. So we're definitely gonna link people to that.
So I combined the two courses together. So if you just link the high vibe course, it's a huge, super long course, but it's on YouTube. But it mostly talks about raising your vibration, but there's a big section that I included like a bunch of videos on quieting your mind. So it's just all in there. It's all in there, but it's all in there.
Yeah,
it takes a lot of time.
Seriously, check it out. Yeah, we'll link everything below.
All right.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you so much for being on board, Andy. This is
this is fun. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks, everyone. Till next time.
Bye.